I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to GameKeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the GameKeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, I'm exhausted before we even get this one rolling, guys. Goodness gracious. This is welcome to West Point, Mississippi, home of Mossy Oak brand camo, the GameKeeper studio. We got, because of it's the week of Thanksgiving, there's just a lot going on. Lanny's out because he was exposed to COVID, we think. Dudley's got a yeast infection or what? UTI, and so he's got to leave.
But I'm still here.
I'm
a hard worker.
Mac, we think, has got something. We went through the list of what he potentially could have a little while ago, and it's scary. So we've got Vandy sitting at the end of the table. He looks like he's angry about something, and I think half your family's sick as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you're dealing with it.
Kind of the way it is with kids.
Yeah. And
we had everybody well for about 3 days at my house. So,
well, Vandy, we're glad to have you here. And then sitting in Lanny's chair is Jess Rayleigh, which is just, it proves the fact we are scraping the bottom of the barrel trying to get people in here for the podcast.
Here we are.
Take what you can get.
So Jess is
until you start paying guests, you're going to be stuck with people like us. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, we will. So we're going to talk about deer stories. We got a few that are already recorded and anxious to hear a few from some of you guys. And so we all love a deer story. And, it's just one of my favorite things to do. So we're going to proceed on. We got some good ones to tell. And Dudley, you're looking at me.
Well, I'm sitting here. I've deer hunted my whole life, and I don't have a good deer story. I've got good duck stories. I've got good turkey stories. I've got all kinds of good stories, but I just don't have a good deer story. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of what everybody else has to say.
So have y'all noticed how much things are costing now? Everything is costing more.
Yeah.
So I'll give y'all an example. Jess, I'm looking at you. What about, do you know the difference, the cost difference in deer nuts and beer nuts?
No.
Beer nuts right now, they're about $4 a can. And deer nuts are under $1.
Wah, wah, wah.
Okay. All right, well.
I've never heard that one before. Have y'all?
All right, I'm going to go back and answer the phones, y'all.
All right.
I do know that it is very expensive to do anything these days. Hell, even just a McDonald's meal for you and your family drive-through is like $50.
Yeah, lean a little closer to the microphone there.
I think a turkey is like $25 now.
It is. You go to Mexican restaurant or any fast food, whatever, it's $40-$50 for a family of four just to eat.
It
Ridiculous.
is. Yeah. So speaking of family of four, Anna, how
Charles
you boys
Allen,
doing?
Harmon, everybody's great.
All right, well, good. Well,
Soccer, karate, all the hunting, fishing, all the family stuff is going on.
Most importantly, did you find your truck keys?
I did not. I had to get a new one. Not great.
Yeah.
Not cheap.
That reminds me of the time.
Speaking of high cost.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the time I lost the keys to the biologic truck.
For what, a year and a half?
It was like a year and a half, and my wife was going through some boxes in the attic, and they were in the very bottom of a box in the attic. I don't know if one of my kids.
That's not a place to keep your keys, does it?
Yeah.
And didn't the truck just end up sitting in your driveway for
Yeah. Yeah, we couldn't find anybody. Well, that's a long story, but we couldn't get anybody to
rekey it.
So,
Mike, what about blood on the biologic? There is so much going on. We don't have enough time to talk about it, but you got any highlights that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, Jessie killed a good deer.
Yeah, she did in Oklahoma. Yeah, that was
Jessie Cole.
Yeah, my daughter.
Bobby's
Jessie,
daughter.
Sure did. Yeah. And then you had some friends in Missouri and Tennessee that killed some big deer, didn't you?
Yeah, Patrick with Dead End Game Calls killed a couple good deer. I mean, killed a 167 in Missouri and then a 180 in East Tennessee, both over biologic. They're using it every evening, which is crazy.
That's tough.
Well, I saw a couple of kids. There's a little girl from Montgomery that I'm friends with her father, and her name is Mary Knox Dozier. She killed her first deer this weekend. That was pretty cool to see. And then our own Austin, his son Lane killed a deer this past weekend. So
That's awesome.
And Hayden Wallace killed one. So it's happening for sure.
Yeah. More kids I've found on Facebook. My cousin Tyler Hardy, the guy that got bit in the head with a copperhead, who was on our podcast, his daughter Asley got a big old 6-point, her first deer. And then I was looking at the Mississippi Whitetails page. My buddy Justin Maloof, I know I've mentioned him already, killed a big deer with his recurve. But his daughter killed a 271-pound buck in Mississippi.
Good Lord.
That is a big deal.
big one.
Boy.
And he's been, I think this is year 3 on him planting a bunch of our radishes. But you should have seen all the fat on that thing. It was.
That's a heavy deer anyway.
271.
That's something you would kill in Iowa, you know.
Do we have a photo of that we can look at?
It's on the Book of Faces. Yeah. Yeah, bet. I think she's already killed a bunch of deer. She's good at it.
Bobby, have you killed anything at the Ponderosa?
No. Just, no. It's thank you, Vandy. But
No problem.
Has Jesse killed anything on them?
no, that's my biggest.
Bobby's trying to send her all over the country so she doesn't kill everything.
Well,
at
we
the
have this
Ponderosa.
text going. She'll be like, "Yeah, we don't have any deer on camera, no big ones yet." And I'm like, "Well, your dad's just not sharing."
He's deleting those pictures. He is deleting those pictures.
There's no pictures of big deer.
I've seen them.
Very
I've
disappointing.
seen 'em.
So. Well, let me set you up. This is Chris Hawley. He is the head guy, I guess, the president of Mossy Oak Properties. And if it's about rural real estate, this guy knows about it. He's super smart when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we're lucky to have him on our team for sure. And Chris hails from down around. He's over there in West Alabama. Usually he and I don't talk this week with the Auburn and Alabama game going on. We don't talk, so we're not going to mention that. But Chris, we want to hear a good deer story, so we'll turn it over to you.
Well, Bobby, I'm going to start, when you called me the other day and wanted a deer story, of course, the first thing comes through mind was David Hunter's first deer, or their biggest deer, or, their first bow kill. And I got to thinking of all those stories. And now we got the next generation coming on. Grayson's next up. So we've got, we got 5 grandsons, and we just had a granddaughter. They're 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. So anyway, the next generation's coming up and starting a deer hunt. Grayson's going. He's been 3 times this year. He's had 2 uneventful hunts, and then he had a really good one the other day. But it's funny because I'm like, Grayson, why didn't you shoot that buck? And no, Papa said, I want to shoot a big one. And I'm like, well, Grayson, so when Hunter and David were coming up, I was like, man, y'all wait for a big one. Don't shoot one of these little bucks. And now my tune has changed. I said, man, I just want y'all to have fun. Y'all just kill a bunch of bucks, So anyway, and I'm taking Hampton because he wants to go with his brother. So I'm taking Hampton, and we're practicing. And the other day we went, Pete dropped us off at the stand so we wouldn't spook anything getting into the box. And so we got into the shooting house, and man, as soon as we got there, Grayson, look, Hampton, there's a nice little 8-point right there. And, we've got a gun. We don't even have it loaded. And so then there's another buck, and does start piling in the field. Well, 30 minutes later, he said, they're just deer everywhere. And it's a great afternoon. And Hampton said, Papa said, we probably need to go back to the house. We've seen enough. And so anyway, I said, well, Hampton, man, it's a great day. We're going to see a big buck here in a minute. We're going to see some more. And so 5 minutes later, he said, Papa, see, my stomach's hurting so bad. So I said, all right, let's go. So we're excited about the next generation, but I'm going to take y'all back in time to something that was totally different than the way we hunt now. And it's, we're going back to 1966. I was from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And anyway, we didn't have a whole lot of deer back then. There was just pockets of deer around. Be honest with you, I didn't see a live deer till I was, probably 7 or 8 years old. And there were just such few deer, but we dove hunted and we quail hunted. That was a great thing we had then. We had a really good quail population that I wish we had now. I'd do a little trade-off. And we squirrel hunted, rabbit hunted. So it's pretty much all small game. And so when I was 9 years old, we were hunting. My dad came home one day and he said, "Hey, want to let y'all know I just joined a hunting club and we're going to go on. They've got deer drives. They have 5 deer drives a year. It's like every other week. And ironically, our first hunt was Thanksgiving weekend in 1966. And so we were so excited. I couldn't sleep the night before. And so right before that week, my mom and dad gave me a single shot Stevens 20 gauge single shot for a Christmas present, early Christmas present. And you can imagine a 9-year-old how excited I was. And so anyway, we go to Smokehouse Hunting Club was the club we had joined, and it was in Ralph, Alabama, and go on this deer drive. And I mean, really, when we pulled up to the camp right there, you couldn't have taken me to Disney World where I was any more excited. And I mean, there was just so much going on. And so just picture the cabin was just an old rustic farmhouse that looked a lot like the Foxtrot at Toxie's Cabins. And it was real rustic looking, but it wasn't a Foxtrot. And I mean, we had the dog guys over there, but a couple things. 85% of the vehicles there were cars. We showed up in a Chevrolet Impala. And the only trucks there were these old Willis Jeep trucks. I don't even think they had shock absorbers. If you ever drove in one time, you never wanted to get one back in one. And so that's what they haul the dogs and the standers around in. And so anyway, long story short, if y'all have ever read The 10th Legion with Tom Kelly, the first time I read it, I said, my gosh, I didn't know he was a member of the Smokehouse Hunting Club, because everything he talked about, the difference between a turkey hunter and a deer hunter, it was in that book. I mean, it was Smokehouse Hunting Club made all over again. So anyway, I mean, it was, I can remember everything. I can remember the camp and just everything as we showed up that day, and just excited. So it was my dad and my 2 brothers. Mike, he was 4 years older than me. So I was 9 years old and Mike was 13, and Joe was 2 years older than him. So he was 15, and nobody in my family had ever killed a deer. Like I said, there just wasn't many deer around. So they put us out on this deer drive, and anyway, we were on a little trail. I remember that. My dad was standing next to me, and we could hear dogs running and folks hollering and everything like you do on a deer drive. And we saw something move to the right. My dad said, don't shoot. There's, and don't pull your safety back, the hammer back on the little Savage. And it was 2 or 3 does that just kind of eased by us to the right there. And where we were hunting, I know now that it had been thinned, or there was it wasn't a clear cut because there was standing timber around. But anyway, we heard a limb pop, and this huge buck, I mean, he just looked like an elk jumping over this treetop coming, and he wasn't 20 yards in front of us. And my dad said, pull your hammer back. And I did. And the deer just, it was like in slow motion, but I don't know if any of y'all have ever watched, I remember the scene in The Water Boy when they're going to do the onside kick, and he's looking who to kick it to. That's what I looked like when I first saw this deer. And I pulled the hammer back, and it was literally in slow motion. It was like that deer almost stopped and started turning. And when he hit the ground, I shot, and he may have gone 5 or 10 feet. And I was so excited. And of course, my dad went up there, and we didn't know what to do. I mean, we'd never been deer hunting, everything like that. And Dad's hollering my brother because he's got a knife. And it was just such a cool experience and excitement, and really set me on the path of, loving to be outdoors and, enjoying every minute of it. And it's so different from the way we hunt now, but it was such a cool experience. And so that big deer, let me back up. The hunting club, it cost $25 to get in the hunting club. And 2 years later, when they went up to 30, everybody bailed. They said, "Oh, we're just not going to pay $30 to go deer hunting." And so the club dismantled when they went up from $25 to $30. But I do remember that my deer also cost $25 to mount, and it was the scrawniest little buck you've ever seen in your life. I mean, it was probably had an 8-inch spread, But when it came over that treetop for a 9-year-old who had never seen a buck in his life, it looked like the biggest elk you had ever seen in your. So exciting time. And I mean, I got to share it with my brothers, and they eventually, they started killing deer after that, and the deer hunting got better and better as, the older we got. And it's just amazing what we've all done to manage our deer. And so anyway, I know it's not an exciting story, but it was for me.
I'm just amazed at that age that the first deer you shot at, you killed, running.
You said you were 9.
I was 9 years old,
yeah.
And literally when he jumped and hit the ground, I mean, it was like answered prayers, because he didn't hesitate, but he just kind of turned and kind of maybe stumbled just a little bit. Just a perfect broadside shot at 20 yards. And so anyway, it was a cool experience. And of course, my brothers, I was like a hero that morning at the hunting club. And I will say this, that when this, some of the traditions these hunting clubs had, they had kangaroo courts and everything like that. But this was my first year, my first buck, my first deer. And the things they did to me that day, folks would get arrested and put in jail. Now, I promise you, it was not pleasant. So my brothers, they said, we are never going to kill a deer at Smokehouse Hunting Club. I can promise you that.
Well, it may have been better than missing a deer,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so Dudley, along those lines, so the next hunt they had, I'd kill the deer, and everybody knew me, and, because of the deer kill, and they'd come up and talk to me. So one of the guys that day missed, and they have a kangaroo court, and of course you're always guilty. Nobody's ever innocent, guilty till proven innocent. And so anyway, I had to paddle the guy. They would actually cut your shirt tail and they would paddle you. And so the first time I hit him, the hunt master said, no, that ain't going to get it. You gotta lay it to him. And so here's this guy, 60 something years old, and a 9-year-old kid taking a paddle and whooping him with it,
That's great.
Yeah, that is. Look, I may have missed it. My bookie was calling me during the middle of some of that. But do you still have those antlers?
No, I don't, Bobby. So through transition and my parents moving and years ago and stuff like that, be honest with you, I'd hate for my kids. It's kind of like I don't want them to see my report card. I really don't want the kids and the grandkids to see my first buck,
Yeah, I understand. Well, Chris, that was a great story.
It really was.
It's kind of walk down memory lane. I've been on some of those dog hunts myself, and that's just how it was back in the day.
Yeah. And Bobby, there's a certain part of that I wish that we could share with the next generation, because there's certain parts of it now. If we have a deer hunt drive, I want to do it on your place and not mine. But anyway, but there, the social part and some of the traditions and stuff were pretty cool, So anyway, but it was a fun time in my life because I got to share it with my family and brothers, and it's, it was more of a social type hunt than it is today. Even.
Yeah.
That's the reason I enjoyed quail hunting so much.
Well, Chris, we sure appreciate it. Thanks again, and y'all have this is going to air after Thanksgiving, but we hope you and your family have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, same to all y'all. Appreciate what y'all do, and great show, and enjoy listening to it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Great story.
That was good.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll have to say this. There's not too many 9-year-olds these days. There's exceptions, but there's not too many 9-year-olds that are proficient like that.
No.
With a fowling piece. It's just different now.
Well, and he would have only had one shot.
Right.
At that buck coming through.
But he had probably killed numerous doves and quail, squirrels, rabbits by the time he was 9 years old. And so he was able to pull the hammer back on that shotgun and put it where it counts. Can't say I would have been able to do the same at 9.
Yeah, I don't think I could either. I'd have flung some lead, but
right. I'd been toting a BB gun since I was 5, I think, and I'd shot a little bit at doves and whatnot, but I don't think I could have made that happen.
No.
Yeah.
I don't
Pretty
think
cool.
I could for sure.
All right, so look, let's keep this thing moving along. Richie, I've got We've got a friend, a guy that I knew growing up. You guys have met him through the years. He's mounted most everything in this building, Rhett Kelly, and we got a story from him. So, Richie, if you could cue that one up, please.
Probably one of my favorite is always when I take my son Zane, and it's more fun to see him be successful than me. I've done it a long time, so it's his time. And probably one of my favorite was I took him to Kansas when he was 19. He's 36 now, but so it's a long time ago. But we went out there, and it's the first time he'd been anywhere like that, out of state. And we had about 700 acres to hunt, and so I take him in there that evening when we got there, and we're watching deer on the river bottom. And about that time, somebody drives in there and runs the deer off. They had like 13 acres joining it, so I said we could have done that back home in Alabama. So the next morning, we have to go about maybe 3/4 of a mile to hook in there on foot to keep deer from smelling us, wind direction and all, and needed to go to a certain place and got probably 300 yards from it. And I started seeing in hazy daylight, black forms out there. I told Zane, as far as we can go, we've got to sit here and just see what we do. And it wasn't but maybe 15 minutes. I see a really nice buck, looked like a rake on his horns. I don't know how many points. It was just a lot. And I said, there's a buck. We got to go try to get on him. It was, we needed to cover about 300 yards, and there was an old dike there that, so just a buildup of ground that would keep to keep the river from flooding that agriculture country. And so we stayed on one side of that and worked down it fast as we could, about 300 yards. And I crawled up over the edge of it and peeped out there, and deer spread out over 100 yards. And I see the big buck, but there's one maybe 50 yards from us. So I crawled back down and told Zane, I said, ease up there and be real careful, because one may see you and blow the deal. So we get up there, and he'd never rested a rifle on little fork sticks, and so had to do that, kind of figure it out, real careful, quick. And I said, it's the deer that's feeding with his head down, and you can't see his antlers right now, and that's the one with his rear toward us. And when the deer finally raised his head, I heard Zane go, ah. So I said, hey, pay attention. Don't get excited, but don't look at the horns. Don't look, and just look at the body. Watch him, and you've got to wait till he turns. And a couple of minutes go by, and he turns broadside, and I said, all right, anytime. And so I'm looking at him in binoculars, and he blew me out of the binoculars with a muzzle blast. And you look back, and all the deer gone. I don't know where they went. They're like quail, hit the bushes quick. And he said, he's a 12 point. And I said, what did I tell you? I don't know how many points he's got. You don't look at that. And so I'm, wondering if he said, let's go look. I said, no, don't move. Just wait. I said, maybe, easing around in there if you didn't hit him, and he'll know where you are if you stand up. So we waited about 20 minutes, and I didn't know, but there was a depression there that he had dropped. I said, okay, reload that clip and turn your scope down on lower power and let's start walking to him. And pretty amazing. So that's the biggest buck my son had ever killed, and of course probably ever will. And it was pretty exciting. He walks a circle around him, and he said, "Danny, that's he's big, isn't he?" I said, "Yeah, he's big." He was, I think, 168 net, so quite a deer, and an exciting deal for it. Well, really, to me, it was more pressure, than of course it would have been if you were hunting for yourself. So, fantastic day.
That's a big deer.
Yeah.
Basically a 170-inch animal.
Yeah.
First deer. And then, getting to walk up on something like that, and like he was saying, walking a circle around and just being in awe and enjoying the moment, that he'll never forget that.
So what tickled me listening to it, though, is how Rhett had kind of alluded to, don't look at his antlers. And
Yeah,
then
the first thing he says, he's a 12-point.
12-point.
Yeah. And there's some lesson to be learned in Rhett's story if you're paying attention, because he talks about, putting his scope back down. He shot him on a higher power and then put your scope back down. A lot of guys would forget to do that in the heat of the battle. And you got to give them a little time if you're unsure about things. You just don't run down there. So
yeah. Sounds like I need to install some dikes around my fields so I can sneak up on them better.
That would sound like an interesting place. The first time he'd been in there.
That's crazy.
But Kansas is killed. Jeff Boxer was talking about that great big deer he killed. That was Kansas. Yeah. All right. So look, Richie, let's call Daniel Haas. He's out of town today, but he's sent word to us that he's got a story. So. What was that?
$20 says he doesn't answer.
He'll answer. He was just texting us.
He owes $20.
Yeah.
I didn't shake anybody.
Hey Daniel, we just won $20. Dudley said he bet us $20 you wouldn't answer the phone. So.
Dadgummit. Oh well.
How are you doing today?
Appreciate that, Daniel.
I'm a little confused why Dudley thinks I wouldn't answer the phone after sending you 3 minutes ago and telling you to call.
He didn't have the inside information.
I don't have an answer for that.
He didn't have any of that info.
He's got Dudley's. He's kind of negative today. There's something going on.
I'm not being negative.
Anyway, so look, I'm sorry we got
Dudley owes me $20 too.
Okay, $20.
Expensive Wednesday.
Yeah, geez.
It's like the lottery around here. So, all right. So Daniel, we're listening to everybody tell some deer stories. We just had Chris Hawley and a friend of mine named Rhett Kelly, who's a taxidermist. He just told his story, and so we're up to you. We don't want to keep you hanging around here waiting for us to call. So we thought we'd go ahead and call you.
Yeah, thank you. And speaking of Rhett, I'd like to hear some deer stories, not from him personally hunting, but some of the strangest things that have happened with people dropping deer off at his place.
Yeah, that could be a pretty good
taxidermy
podcast
stories. I like that a lot.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you one real. While you brought that up, it reminds me. About 20 years ago, we were coming out with some new with shadow. I can't remember what exact pattern it was, but we decided to do some dioramas to take to the SHOT Show, and there was a turkey hunter leaning against a tree wearing green leaf, I think, at the time. So we had these mannequins, and Rhett built the dioramas that these hunters would sit in. And another one was he made it look like there was some water. One of those is still out front. And so there was a hunter from the waist up, like he was standing in water leaning against a tree. And Rhett told me at one time when he was working on those, so we sent him clothes, and we bought mannequins and sent down there, that this lady walked in to get a duck mounted that her son had killed, and she saw these forms, and she was looking at them, and he knew what was going through her mind. And she was like, "Oh my God, is that what I think?" And he said, "Yes, there's a new way that you can remember your loved ones doing what they love the most." And he said she was just shocked. And he finally told her what was going on. But I always laughed at that.
We should get that done for you, Bobby, so we can have you in the office all the time.
It would be. So, all right, Daniel, let's get back to business. Why don't you tell us your story?
Well, I figured I'd tell a Pawpaw story since his stories are more interesting than mine, and he can't be in the studio to tell it himself. But last year, as I think most people listening to the podcast saw the picture of Grant and Pawpaw together with the buck that he'd killed in Mississippi hunting with Dad, which is one of the coolest pictures in the history of Mossy Oak. That, so everybody knows, we've begged every turkey that Pawpaw kills, and every time we're at camp with them the past 5 years, we beg Gran to get in a picture, but she hates. We always call her and Mom the people behind the scenes that, everybody knows Dad and Pawpaw, but Gran and Mom are always there, but they never want to be on camera. So Gran, even in her old age, won't let us take pictures. And so last year, after Pawpaw had killed that buck, after we weren't sure how good the shot was, Dad went and trailed him, and we all met up at Gran and Pawpaw's house to show Pawpaw the recovery. And I begged Gran, and so she put on one of Pawpaw's old Bottomland shirts over what she was wearing and went out there and took a picture with him. And I'm so glad she did, because it was so cool. But anyway, most people thought that was where his season ended, because I think probably some people think every time Pawpaw gets in the woods, there's a camera with him. But these last couple of years, most of the time when he gets out there, there's not. We just kind of just want to leave him be. The turkey footage that Neil filmed last year, as you can see, he was like holding a home video camera by his waist when Pawpaw shot. So we've just, even if there's a 2% chance that a camera messes up a hunt at this stage with Pawpaw, it feels like such a miracle just to get him out there. We don't want to take it. So anyway, so most people thought that's where Pawpaw's season ended last year. And as most people in Mississippi, Alabama know now, we call it meat week, but Alabama's deer season goes, all the way to the 8th to the 10th, depending on the year now. And so last year we were down there for meat week, filling the freezer, and Pawpaw is filling up for another hunt. So on the 9th or whatever, I can't remember what day the season ended last year, but the next to last day of the season, Pawpaw's filling up for it, and the weather is just right where it's going to be warm enough in the afternoon where he can go sit in the shooting house. So we were talking to Grant and Pawpaw, and I meet him at the gas station about 20 minutes from where we're going to hunt, because I was already at Shamula. So I meet Grant and Pawpaw down there, and they're all fired up, getting out of Grant's little Toyota. And we gather up all the stuff. We've got his sugar sack that's famous for anybody that hunts with him. Knows he's got the same old little cotton shoulder bag from an old buddy of his that worked for a sugar company, and that's like his safety blanket when he goes hunting. Graham packs him up peanut butter sandwiches and bananas and whatever, vegetable muffins, all the stuff that he's allowed to eat. Anyway, I get Pawpaw and we go down there and meet Greg Briggs. So we go out and sit in the shooting house, and we're sitting there, and it's just, at that point, it's so cool. Anytime these past couple of years, every time deer season ends and every time turkey season ends, the past 3 years, we've all kind of been at peace, thinking that was probably the last time he would ever deer hunt or turkey hunt. And then miraculously he gets back the next year, and we're thinking, well, even if he's, still relatively healthy by the time he gets back to the next season, he probably won't be able to hunt. And then lo and behold, he hunts again. So anyway, I meet him down there. Me and Greg are sitting there, and we're just soaking it in, enjoying being out there with him. And this little 8-point walks out, and so I don't have any sense of urgency at all, because Pawpaw couldn't see it yet, and I'd kind of seen it on the other side of a brush pile, and I knew it was tiny and probably not a shooter. So the buck steps out about 100 yards, and I've got no sense of urgency, and I just lean over to Pawpaw, and I'm like, "Hey, Pawpaw, there's a buck out there, probably not a shooter. If you want to take a look at him." Greg hadn't seen it yet either, so Pawpaw gets his leans down on a scope to get a look at him, and Greg is asking what he is, and I said, "Well, he's pretty little, but you can shoot it." Boom! Right through the heart. I was not prepared at all. I was just sitting there like, "Oh, we'll watch this little buck. There's about an hour and a half of daylight left." And as soon as I thought Pawpaw was just glassing him, and as soon as he got on him, man, there's no doubt he pulled the trigger. Deer ran about 30 yards and crashed. We were so fired up. He was so excited after he shot that he dropped his rifle, and the scope got a little banged up. So I think most people probably expect one deer, especially the buck that he killed with Dad in Mississippi, was a great deer. I'm pretty satisfied with the season. So then he shoots another one. So we're really like, all right, he's been hunting 3, maybe 4 times this year, and he's killed 2 bucks. I think we can call the season and start praying that he gets the turkey hunt. So we go out there, we recover, and Papa's all fired up. We go back to the camp, and Gran is more fired up than anybody. She's just giddy, laughing and kissing him, and so we have a great night. We just there have a glass of whiskey and just soak it all in. Papa just killed 2 bucks in the past month. So he wakes up the next morning, and we're thinking he's going to go home, and he's like, all right, last day of the season, and we'll go again. It's like, all right, Papa. So I was the lucky one that got to go with him the day before. So, and Greg was sitting with us. So Neil and Dad took him on this day, and he goes out there and all the, thinking that he wasn't going to hunt again. We forgot, this is my fault because I was the one sitting with him, but we forgot to shoot his rifle and make sure it was still on when he had gotten all jacked up and dropped it. So they went out there, and a huge buck walks out, and Papa was about to go 3 for 3, and he shot, hit him way back, and they ended up not finding him or anything, but because the gun was a little off. But yeah, at the end of deer season last year, everybody thought that picture of him and Graham was the end of the season, and he ends up going 2 more times, killing another buck, and would have killed a 3rd buck if I would have done my job and made sure the gun was back sighted in. But it was a heck of a season. It felt like a miracle every time, and that if he doesn't get to kill a deer this year, I think that was his insurance policy, making sure he had 2 or maybe 3 in case he didn't get to go.
Wow,
that's great.
Yeah, man, I love a good Mr. Fox story.
Yeah,
who doesn't? He's such a cool, iconic figure.
Yeah,
and he loves to hunt.
Yeah, and I've never been with him, but I hear about how excited he gets, and Vandy often mimics his heavy breathing when something comes out.
It's so funny whenever, no matter what it is, deer hunting, turkey hunting, whatever, whenever it comes time, he just, it's like the first time he's ever been. To get that excited after doing it that long is incredible.
Everybody, Dad says it, but everybody thinks that Papa is this like gentle old soul that he's not worried about killing anything anymore, and he is a gentle old soul, but he wants to kill something as bad as more than you would think. How bad we want him to get a turkey or get a deer outweighs how much he wants to get one himself. But it is great medicine. Him anticipating being able to hunt again and then actually getting out in the woods is the best medicine on earth for him. But he wants to shoot another one so freaking bad, and although everybody that's cheering him on would hate to know this, he feels like he's got the pressure of every single person at Mossy Oak and everybody that he's ever known. He knows how bad they want him to get another turkey, get another deer. So he wants to get one for himself, but he also feels like he's got to get one more for all of us because he knows how bad we want one for him. So now that rifle season's opening back up, he's not in great health right now, but all it takes is one afternoon of him feeling good and the temperature being just high enough that he can go sit. So we're crossing our fingers that we can get him back into a shooting house sometime in the next month.
Well, don't forget to sight in the old 243 pump before he goes back out.
Yeah, we're on top of it now. Yeah. We already got it ready to go.
When he raises that gun barrel, no matter what kind of hunting it is, you better plug your ear because he aims on pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
When he raises that gun barrel.
How about that? Well, Daniel, we'll all I tell you what, we'll make sure we say a prayer for Mr. Fox and that y'all get out there this fall and winter with him. We'll all be cheering for him. There's so many people that'd love to see another picture.
Yeah, we'll be crossing our fingers.
Yeah, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much for that story. And like Jess said, who doesn't like a good Mr. Fox story? That was really good. Well, so thank you so much. And you're welcome to stay on here and listen, or if you need to go on about your day, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on and listen, but don't expect any commentary from me. I'll kick it back to y'all.
Thanks, Daniel.
Okay. All right. So, Richie, moving right along, I'd like to summons the recording of Matt Drury, if we could, please.
Probably my favorite in recent years would be the deer that Terry had that he called Gnarly. My biggest deer ever, and that's not the reason why it's a great story. It's because I almost found a way, about 2 different ways, to mess that hunt up, as I usually do. And so we were there at Dad's farm. So early in October, I had gone up there and I laid eyes, had an encounter with an absolute giant that they call Gnarly. And it was the first time they had laid eyes on him in person, and that year. And he was just a big, big deer. And I mean, after that, I was like, holy cow! All right, this is, it'd be fantastic if we could lay eyes on him again. And we go out to a set that we call Matt's Killing Tree. So it's on a logging road that historically I've had a ton of luck on. I've killed probably 3 different bow deer out of a tree stand on the other side of this logging road. Well, Terry and Forrest had sat there and they noticed the movement on the other side of the road, so they hung a new set. So this is my first time in the set. Forrest and I are hunting there early in the morning. I believe it was, October 26th or 27th, somewhere in there. And we're trying to catch, something coming back to bed. So going from the biologic, food source and then heading back into the bedroom. And it was one of those years where there was a bumper crop of acorns, and we were on this acorn flat, and just in a good spot. And beautiful late October morning. The leaves were all changing colors. The sun was shining through. High pressure morning. Just one of those days where you just cannot beat being out in the woods, no matter what happens. You're just watching the world wake up. So we're sitting there, and time had passed by, and we saw a couple deer, and it'd been a little bit, probably been 45 minutes since I had seen the last deer, and I think it was around 10 o'clock maybe. And so finally I thought, all right, let's get down and go back to camp, and then we'll regroup and get a bite to eat and head back out for the evening sit. So I start lowering my bow. Myself and Forrest were in 2 different trees. The set is the camera guy's set is in a different tree. And so I start lowering my bow, and I look down the logging road out kind of towards the field, and I said to Forrest, I think there's a deer, there's a buck down there. I see a buck. And my bow was on the ground. So, I had my backpack on and all my, my rangefinder and my binoculars, everything's in my backpack. So I'm looking down there, and finally I think I see another buck. I'm like, uh-oh. So luckily my pull-up rope was, still attached to the bow and still attached to my stand. And so I quickly pull the bow back up, and all of a sudden I see there's Gnarly. He's the 3rd buck. And I thought it was strange just in general that this little bachelor group at this point in the season was kind of following each other back to bed, and they were just kind of slowly feeding through the timber, eating acorns. And so I pull my bow up, I put my bow in the hanger, I get my backpack off, I pull out my rangefinder and binoculars, get that all settled, and I'm strapped into the safety harness and all that good stuff. And so I knock an arrow on my bow very quickly and kind of in haste, because they're coming, they're slowly coming, but they're still coming, and I'm trying to get settled back in. And lo and behold, this deer, the first one kind of moves past us, a younger buck. The second buck was a good deer, a good 5-year-old deer. Well, he kind of goes straight behind us on this logging road, and I thought for sure he was going to get our wind. Never. It was a high pressure morning. Thermal's rising. He never caught us. He just kept walking. All right. So all we got to worry about now is if Gnarly is going to come in close enough to give us a shot. And he fed and he fed and he fed. And at some point, I put my release aid on the D loop. All right. And I had just a little bit of tension on that D loop. And I must not have knocked my arrow all the way. It was partially knocked, and the arrow falls to the ground. And I mean, between the bow being on the ground originally, all my stuff being packed up, and then this arrow falls to the ground, and the deer might be 20, 30 yards from us, kind of behind some trees, working his way slowly through the timber. And I knock another arrow, and I swear that this this may be a fable at this point in time, but I swear that noise almost called that deer to the tree, that arrow falling to the ground like an acorn had fallen to the ground or something. And he turned and he started walking straight to us. And then he started walking to my left a little bit, and he gave me a 7-yard shot right below the tree. I hit him, right there in the heart. He ran ran away at, probably 70, 80 yards over the logging road and over the hill to where we couldn't see him. And I'm just jacked up and pumped up, and I give Dad a call, and he hauled butt, and he drove 45 minutes back to camp. We didn't go look for the deer without him. I wanted to experience that with Dad no matter what happened. I felt like he was a dead deer, but wanted to experience that with Dad, potentially the biggest deer in my life. And we go to camp, we watch the kill. It looks good. We're all jacked up, and we go in there and recover the animal together, and some had, a few tears and high fives and fist bumps, and it was a special moment on several levels. The story, the craziness of how it played out, of almost ruining the opportunity, almost getting down 5 minutes too early, and all these things, the arrow falling off the nock. And the season before is when Dad had his tree stand accident, and we were just fortunate he was still with us, and we were still able to make these kind of memories together. And that, to me, will have to go down as, no matter if I ever kill a deer again or kill a bigger deer or how many ever deer, it has to be one of the best stories that I'll ever have. And to share it with him and be there together, it's just, one of those moments that I'll never forget.
Yeah, well, that was a great story. And the fact that, when we asked your dad a few weeks ago to tell a story, that's the story. He told it from his perspective. And for both of y'all to feel that way about the event, that's really special.
It's as you know, with your daughter Jessie, those moments, they're special for different reasons, and to share in success of someone, somebody else, somebody so close to you that you love so much and shares your blood, and and I look forward to those moments with my kids, hopefully one day soon.
And look, if I remember right, Gnarly was like 170 inch and some change. It was somewhere in that world. What I mean, he's a giant deer.
Yeah, his mass, it was just incredible. And I'm looking at him right now. I'm in my office as I do this interview. He's looking right down on me, so I get reminded of what I'm after here. And I may not ever kill one like this again, and that's okay. It's because the story with it, just in the timber, in a tree stand, all the mishaps, and then that experience of recovery with Dad is just one I'll never forget.
Well, we appreciate it. You take care now. We'll see you.
All right. Thank you, Bobby.
The juries, I mean, boy, they know how to lay them down.
They've got plenty of deer stories.
Right.
Yeah.
I love the human aspect of that story. I mean, he still messed up a little bit and was able to pull it off and had a little bit of luck on his side, but
there's a lot of people that take a handful of rocks or even grab acorns as they're walking in and drop them. And deer are attracted to that sound.
Have you ever done that?
I have. I don't know that that it's ever worked for me, but David Lindsay swears by it. Especially and Dudley's not going to like this, but sawtooths.
Well, you can use rocks too, or arrows or whatever. I wouldn't drop my arrow, but on purpose. But
well, I enjoyed that story. Y'all heard the recording, but when we asked Terry a few weeks ago on part one of this, that was his favorite story too. His memory there with Matt, and then and Matt didn't realize that, and he told that as his.
It was interesting to hear from each side.
Yeah, it sure was. So, all right, guys. Well, let's move along with the next story we've got, Richie. We've got. The editor of our magazine, Todd Amenrud, lives in Minnesota, and he's a big bow hunter. He's killed a bunch of deer. Looking at Vandy, you got a smile on your face. Vandy, what's going on there?
No, I was just wondering how many of these
recordings we have.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to get to go to lunch.
I'm not really worried about that. I was trying to leave here by lunch.
Okay. Well, we don't have but a few more, if you don't mind. So Richie,
only 4 or 5 more.
Yeah, so Todd, he's the editor of our Gamekeeper magazine. He's a great guy, big bow hunter, and he had a really interesting story that is worth hearing him tell.
Manitoba, their Department of Tourism used to give me a tag, and I would go up there and hunt, and then I would write about Manitoba and about where it was hunting and things like that. So this would have been either, I'd have to look back, but probably 90 or 91. On the edge of a big sunflower field, probably was about noon, when all of a sudden I looked over my left shoulder and I saw the biggest buck I've probably ever seen in the wild in my life. Antler size, we'll say. I've seen some whopper body size in Iowa, but antler size, this was the biggest buck I'd ever seen in the wild. And all I tried to do is just calm my nerves. The buck was at 18 yards. I drew back. He stepped his leg closest to me forward, and I fired. And the shot looked so well. After I stopped shaking, I hung my bow back up. I said a little thank you prayer to my Lord. Went back to the cafe in Letellier, Manitoba. I didn't want to walk in the cafe in my hunting clothes to get them all stinky, so I'm not rapping on the window trying to get my dad and the other guys who were already back in and ready to take a nap, I think, for the afternoon, and got them to come outside, and we all went back out and started tracking. We're planning on finding this deer within a couple hundred yards. Well, at about a couple hundred yards, this animal knew we were trailing it somehow and started to do some things that just boggled my mind. It would walk in a circle. I'm guessing a radius of maybe 20 yards, and would walk the circle twice and then turn off the circle. It looks like he got down on and crawled through this frozen creek bed so he could be out of view from us while he worked his way around us. That was our original thought, is whoop, 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 we're going to back out of here. It's up on its feet again. We gave it all night then, that night. So the second day, we're tracking it, and we get into this very thick woodlot. My dad and I are on the trail, and we post my brother, my good buddy John Haspel. I hand my dad my bow because everybody always says, you got to get on your hands and knees to get through. I literally had to get down on my hands and knees to follow this trail through this thick stuff. And I got to within, I'll bet, 8, maybe 10 feet away from this buck. And it stood up, and I thought it was going to charge me because it didn't run. It looked at me like leave me alone. It turned over its shoulder and looked at me, and I swear the look on its face was, leave me alone. Well, it took off running. So it was hurting enough so that I could literally keep up with it while I ran after it. So it's going out to the side that my brother is posted on. And God bless him, he is not a bow hunter, but he's trying to do his best. And it's cold, so he's wearing this goofy pair of mittens. I yell to my brother Troy. I say, Troy, he's coming your way. And the buck steps out 20 yards from my brother, looking in the opposite direction, looking back towards me. And my brother pulls up his bow, comes to about 1/8 draw, and his mitten hits his release trigger, and his arrow goes pink about 4 feet into the snow in front of him. So we're able to drive across some stubble fields we had 2 Suburbans, and we're following the trail right out the window. And my brother whips up his hand and points straight in front of us into the shelter belt and yells, there he is. And this buck turned around and came right back at us, right between the 2 vehicles. And this, mind you, these are pretty large agricultural fields there. We were able to drive alongside of this animal within 10, 15 yards, 2 different vehicles. We were on either side of it while it was running back towards some other woodlots. So everybody got a chance to see where I hit this animal. And it is astounding that it was not dead. I would have said it was a perfect shot. To give you an idea of the size of this animal, it was a perfect 6x6 with, I'm guessing, 20-inch G2s on him. Beautiful little stickers and stuff coming out all over the place. Everybody said it was well over 200 inches, and most of us guessed it right at about that, 210-inch inch mark.
Holy cow, that's a big deer.
Oh, it just was hellacious. Like I say, probably biggest deer antler size I've ever seen in the wild. I went back out by myself the next day and looked for a third day. We gave up, came back home, and 2 weeks later, I got a call from one of my friends from Letellier that said that he had seen the deer out feeding in the same, in an adjacent field, the field immediately adjacent to the one that I arrowed him in, out feeding with about 30 other deer. Said he saw him out there and he was alive and seemed to be doing well.
Quite a deer. That's quite a story.
Their instinct, their will to survive is just incredible. I'll never forget the experience.
All right, Todd. Well, look, we appreciate you being on here. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Bobby.
Look, guys, a 210-inch typical.
When he said 20-inch G2, and I know Todd well enough. I mean, how many Pope and Young plus deer has he killed with a bow and arrow?
Oh, yeah, like 40.
Right. He knows. He probably judged that deer properly.
Yeah. So he did everything right, seems like, but
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That stinks that it was archery and they were driving while the deer was running. I mean, what, like in the movies, would you be allowed to shoot an arrow out of the window? I don't think you can.
I don't know.
But
that's a crazy story. It sure is. So, look, I'm kind of looking over here at Jess. You look like you got a smirk on your face. Well, I know you got a good story. We'd love to hear yours.
Laughing at the driving next to the deer.
Yeah,
I can picture
reminds
that.
Me, it's similar to the story I've got where I caught a lot of flack over that story when it happened. It was back in 2018, right?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. The microphone is there for your.
So the story I've got was, like I said, back from 2018, and I remember catching a bunch of flack over it, specifically from Bobby, as he often accuses me of nothing you ever do is simple, just normal. But anyway, so yeah, my story is I was laughing at Todd's about driving next to it because it reminds me of mine, and it's the biggest deer I've killed to date. I think it was a 158, so it's not the score is the deal, but just because it's a auditory thing, just to give people an idea. And he's a big mainframe six point deer with a bunch of kickers and stuff. So he's, is a huge deer.
Yeah.
Anyway,
mainframe 6 that scores that much has got a lot of
it's got a lot of trash and a bunch of his stickers are tines basically. They're pretty long. But anyway, so it was 2018. It was one of those days where I remember it was a Wednesday. And it had rained a lot the day before, and there was another storm coming, and I was like, "Look, it's going to rain for the next couple of days. Not going to have a chance to hunt." So
you probably left me to handle the phones and went deer hunting.
No, this was after we worked in the same building, but I had for sure left somebody, somewhere to do something. But I went, and I don't know, long day, whatever. Wasn't going to have a chance to hunt a lot, and this neck of the woods, mid-December is when it starts getting right. Mm-hmm. For us, and anyway, I just long day at the office, whatever, the day before, so I had to get out there. But I remember just saying, I'm not going to go sit. I'm going to go, as Lanny likes to call it, make a loop.
Do some slipping
around, and which is if you're, like most people around here, if you have trouble sitting still. It's kind of the preferred method of hunting.
Or if you don't have a place your own place, you can go.
This is on a lease I had.
Are you suggesting that anybody here would have ADHD?
Right. Yeah. Well, so it was on a lease I had with some buddies from the coast, and it was around 2,000 acres. There was 14 people in it, but they all, like I said, they live on the coast. So, occasionally I would have the place to myself, so I would go
Slipping and tipping.
slipping around, which is, basically get a grunt call around your neck and some rattling horns in your rifle and get the wind in your face and start easing around. So it's one of those days where it was on the front side of a storm, so there were, these big pockets of clouds that were coming over and had showers in it, and it was a southeast wind, so it would have been coming, from that direction. But it was one of those deals where you'd have like a big rain cloud come over and it would drizzle on you, and then it would clear up and you would have really sunny, just really bright sun, and then it just progressively throughout the day would get, more and more cloudy. But I started in our place. If anybody listening knows where the Brooksville Bakery is in Mississippi, it was in that part of the world, not close to that, but it was in that part of Knoxville County, which is a great place to hunt. But we I went there by myself in the morning. I don't know, whatever it was, like 10 o'clock. Figured I'd go hunt midday. Get in, park, get all my stuff together. Like I said, I had rattling horns and a grunt call around my neck and a rifle, and was, the plan was to get the wind in my face and make this big loop, which would basically take 4 or 5 hours. So my whole method is go somewhere, sit down, get set up, get tucked in by a tree, kind of like turkey hunting, call and just wait and see what happens. It's worked a lot in the past. You rattle up a couple bucks or, whatever, see deer come across, and you just, that's the way you hunt, still hunting. And so I'm go through a food plot, set up on the edge of that, and then, nothing there. Move down a trail, I don't know, 300-400 yards, call, nothing happens. So I get to where there's a big creek that runs down the middle of the property, and it rained the day before. There's a lot of water running, but to paint the picture, there's a big creek that runs through the center, and on each side there's mixed hardwood. So there's somebody planted a lot of sawtooths. Sorry, Dudley, back in the day.
All right.
You know the spot I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You've been there a couple times with me, and there's water oak, sawtooths, a bunch of ash, hackberries, a bunch of just mixed woods. That's a lot of fun to hunt. And then it's that's on both sides of the creek, and it's between a bunch of pines on each side. So there's a lot of edge area going there, and deer, travel beside that. But I'm walking down the creek, and I hear this really loud waterfall sound, just loud. And I'm like, God. So I go, and I'm just kind of looking at it, and it turns out there's one of these big trash cans that's like the ones that the trucks back in, they flip them over, not like the big ones with the lid on it,
Like
and
the big county trash
the big
cans.
county trash cans, yeah. And the water's running up it and then falling, making just the perfect waterfowl, and it's loud as hell, like it's 3 or 4 feet above where it's hitting down, so it's just roaring like you wouldn't believe. So I walk over, I hear that, and I walk over, and I'm looking at it, and I put my gun down next to a tree that's right next to me, and I pull my binoculars up, and I'm looking, the wind's in my face, I'm working my way down this creek, and I look, and I'm just looking, out through the woods just to see, because I was already there. I kind of had walked up on top of a hill, and I'm looking through my binoculars, and I see just a brown flash right there in front of me. I'm like, oh my God. And it's one of those deals where you go into kind of slow motion mode, and as soon as I pulled my binoculars down, I knew, it was a doe. I see her running off, and I knew there was going to be a buck behind her because of the time of year. And by the time I turned, if you imagine, I turned, looked to my left, and I grabbed my rifle at the same time. I knew what was going on. And I look, and there's this deer, and he's running, and he's not full sprint. His tongue's hanging way out of his mouth. And all I see is his right side, which if you see a picture of the deer, it's just really thick and palmated on that side. And I can just see him like slow galloping, just ba-boom, 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 walking. You can't hear anything because of the trash can right there. The water's so loud. So like I said, all I see was that doe run by, just a quick flash in my binoculars. I was looking through those, look and see him, boom. I grab my gun and throw up on him. By that time, there's a lot of brush immediately to my, so again, looking southeast, I look northeast at him, see him running. By the time I got the gun up, he just was behind a bunch of trash and thicket and was just on the other side of the creek. So between me and him at this point, I don't know, 25 or 30 yards. So he's pretty close. I keep my scope on like 5, kind of in the middle, because you never know what's going to happen. And he runs by me, and all I could think was, I'm not going to be able to get it on him from behind as fast as he was running as close to me. So I didn't know what to do. I just picked up my gun and started running down the creek and hollering at him, yelling, "Hey, hey!" like that. And he was running slow enough to where, and I'm not fast.
So he
But
was that
he
ruddy that you decided to.
By the time he came by me, I just picked up my gun and started running. You got to imagine I had my grunt call on, rattling antlers around my neck too, my binoculars around my neck, a backpack on.
Probably a cigarette involved in it somewhere.
No, I had quit smoking by then. So I started running down the side of the creek, and I don't know, just was going and walking. And I'm yelling at him and yelling. And I had my gun, and it's like Last of the Mohican style. If you remember that scene from the movie where they're all running and they've got everything going. And I'm like jumping over, whatever, vines and bushes. And I just remember him getting away, and I was like, I got to do something now. And I throw up and just am looking through my scope, waiting out ahead of him, knowing that the angle would be about right for a shot. And just remembering thinking, as soon as you see brown, pull the trigger, because it was that close. And I did. I shouldered into a tree, lined up where I thought he would be, the right height. And as soon as I saw brown, I pulled the trigger and came up. As soon as I shot, I came up and was looking. I saw him tumble, boom, 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 and get up and start running again. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So I started running. By this time, I just lost everything I had. My backpack, everything had come out. I'm cut up on my face. If you remember, my arms, everywhere's bleeding from running through briars. It's just one of those deals where you completely blank out, and like, I guess instinct, whatever kicks in, and you're
savage mode.
Trying to, yeah. It's one of those deals you just got to make it happen. Like, I don't know how to explain it other than, when you see a deer like that, everything you just, kind of lose it. And
that sounds like something, maybe Mark Drury would have done if he had a big deer come by, run off chasing it.
And I stop, and he gets up and runs off, and I'm thinking, oh my God, did I hit him? The creek is big. I mean, it's 15 yards wide. You can't cross it. It's water's raging down through there. So I call a friend of mine, Seth Robbins, and I'm breathing, and I'm like, Seth, all this stuff. And he's like, dude, calm down. What the hell happened? I heard a shot. And I was like, I just shot a monster. You got to get over here. We got to help find it. A couple hours go around. I go around the backside of the property, and we find blood. And sure enough, trail him. I don't know. He probably ran 150, 175 yards and had tried to get into the creek and hung up in the creek and was just there on the edge of the creek, dead. We pulled him out, and the rest is history. But God, I just remember, like you said, heart beating, everything just comes together, and you don't know what to do other than you've got to make a shot somehow, because you can't let a deer like that pass you, and that's what I did, and it worked out.
I'll tell you what, he's a hell of a deer.
Great deer.
Yeah. What did he weigh? Do you remember that?
200. He's big.
Yeah, he was a big body deer.
Big old deer. He was, I don't know, he was gray all around his face. We didn't weigh him, but I don't know, it was easily over 210, 15 pounds. I mean, I got, we can look at pictures of him, but he was a hammer for sure.
He's the one that's in Jess's Zoom background.
Yeah. That's the other one that's to the left.
Which one? Oh, so it's not the one immediately behind you. It's the other one.
No, that was
Jess's office is turning into like a miniature Bobby Cole museum now.
Yeah.
I wish.
There's a lot of taxidermy in there now.
But I'm still just interested in the fact that your brain took over and you chased the deer instead of like waiting on the doe to circle around.
No, I mean, they were running.
It
she
worked.
Was running
I mean,
full
it
speed.
worked. I'm not picking on you.
It was one of those deals where they travel up and down that creek. They weren't coming back.
Right.
They were on a beeline.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well, that's neat that you made that decision and it worked out.
Yeah. I can't even say that it was intentional. It just happened. It just, whatever it was, that was the deal.
Yeah, you can't even explain it when stuff like that happens. It just happens.
I do wish I had a video of running down the creek, hollering, full knee boots, all this stuff flinging off of me.
So he was just completely rut stupid, and you were just trying to yell to get him to stop.
Yeah, and his tongue. I'm talking about, when I was running, it was for a few. I don't know how long it was, but for a few seconds we were neck and neck, yelling.
It's like
I bet the cuss words were flying.
Oh God.
The
phone call after it would be. I wish I had a recording of that.
Yeah,
that was the deal there.
That's a good story, Jess. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm looking at Vandy. We just pulled you in last minute. Have you got one that you want to tell Vandy?
I mean, I don't have one anywhere near as cool as any of these other ones that have.
Jess is hard to top.
I know. It's not going to be anywhere
Well, it's
near.
similar to Todd's with the truck driving looking at the deer. That's why I was laughing so hard.
So I was in the shooting house and a buck came out and I shot it and we went and picked it up.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, the one that comes to mind, I can't even remember when this was now. It's been several years ago now. I went and hunted a stand that Toxie suggested that I go sit in, and sat there all morning and saw deer moving off at a distance, and they were all going in the same direction, going to the same spot. And so I asked him later on, I was like, kind of gave him a description of where they were going. And he said, yeah, there's a little food plot back there in the woods, and they're probably all going in there. I'm sure one of those big white oaks is dropping acorns in there or something. So he said, there's another stand in there. You should go hunt there tomorrow. And so like every other good hunting story, nothing goes as planned to start with. Woke up late, was rushing to get there. My truck's almost out of gas. Have to stop and pump gas in my hunting clothes. All the stuff you don't want to do. And I'm starving, so I run to the gas station, grab a few snacks, throw in my bag, get to this stand, find it, and I'm pretty sure it's one that my brother-in-law Neil had hung, and he's notorious for making sets where only he can get in them.
You gotta climb a tree.
Gotta jump 6 feet.
Yeah, so I'm standing on top of the sticks, and I can just barely reach the bottom of the stand. So I have to, pull myself up in there, and it's not like I'm in tip-top physical shape or anything. So finally get up in there, get everything set up, stop sweating for a little while. And it's towards the tail end of the rut. This is like January. And so there's just bucks cruising through there, and I see several smaller bucks, and I see one small buck off, probably 100 yards through the woods. And so I just grunt at him to see, kind of see what he'll do. And he comes walking my way, and I hear leaves rustling, and he walks past me, and I'm sitting there, and I reach in my bag, and I open a bag of those Welch's fruit snacks. I don't know if you've ever had those, but they're delicious.
Great adult fruit snacks.
Yeah, great adult snack. Now we keep them stocked in my house for my kids, but anyway, they were an adult snack that day, and I'm eating those, watching this buck walk off the other way, and I thought I heard something else behind me, and I turn and look, and there's a big, wide 8-point standing 10 yards right behind me, and I've got a handful of fruit snacks, and I'm just standing there. Don't have my bow in my hand or anything. And he is, for some reason, oblivious to me being in the world. And he just keeps on walking, and he's looking at that other buck the whole way, and he's just cruising right behind him. And so I, quickly stuffed the fruit snacks in my mouth and then grabbed my bow. And as he's walking by, he gets, probably 20 yards past me, and he's walking like straight away from me, won't really give me a good shot. And finally he turns just enough that I feel like I can get a shot off, and I shoot, and I hit him further back than I want to, and just get right through the guts. It's like, God. And I watch him run down the hill, and he stops at like 100 yards, and he's just sitting there just wobbling back and forth. And I was like, and I can't text, I'm shaking too bad. And finally, I sit down on the base of the stand for like 10 minutes, and I'm trying to, control my breathing so that I can send a message out saying, what had happened. And Toxie's like, you need to get down and come back to town, and we'll go back and look for him a little bit, give him a little bit. So we end up going back later on that afternoon, and he had gone probably 150 yards and was still alive. And I had to shoot him again with a bow from the ground, and it was that was pretty difficult to do at point blank range. But anyway, got it done. That's one of the many stories that end with me making a bad shot. But that was probably my first big memory of me making a bad shot.
That's good. And I wonder if the crinkle of the bag.
It's probably the smell. Rattled
the buck in.
Of the fruit snacks.
Okay.
If I had to guess.
Well, maybe we should.
One of the takeaways from that is
always carry snacks.
Well, everybody you ever hear that talk about trying to shoot a walking deer ends up shooting a little bit behind them.
Oh, yeah.
That just that split second, that additional step puts 6 inches between.
And I did try to
point
stop him, but I mean, he was just like in a daze.
Wouldn't hear
anything. So
Maybe you should have yelled at him like Jess did.
Yeah, or threw the gummies
I don't think
at
I
him.
screamed at him, but I mean, I think I, made
Dropped the gummies like acorns. Like we were talking
Well, you
about.
probably had a mouthful of food and you
I
couldn't
did.
make a
I
noise.
couldn't. I was trying to chew it up real fast.
All right, well, that's a good story, Vanny. So I've got a little quick story that I'll tell, and Richie, Richie, Lord have mercy. Some days, but anyway. So my little story. I started taking Jessie hunting when she was really little, and she progressed from 7 or 8 years old on up. Well, in the last few years she was in college, she'd want to go hunting, but I'd say, hey, let's go and hunt this one stand I like to go to. And it takes 30 solid minutes to walk to it. And she would always be like, ugh, that's such a long walk. Is there someplace else? So I never really got to take her to this one spot because it was just, in her mind, it was such a long walk. Well, this particular year, she came home. She was living in New York City. She came home, and I said, she wanted to hunt, and I said, let's go. I've left this alone. Let's go to this one spot. It's a 30-minute walk now. And she said, oh, that's nothing. So evidently in New York, 30-minute walks were, commonplace. So we left out and walked. I was so excited to go to the spot, and I'd left it alone. We get there. Sitting there, the wind's right, it's in our face, beautiful afternoon, it's in late December, the rut's on. And as it's starting to get dark, there's a doe that just shows up in the woods. You can just see bits and pieces of an ear or an eye or a leg, or just when they would move because it was really, really thick. And then I began to see a piece of an antler, and then an ear, and then a tail. And it was about a 20-minute cat and mouse game going on where you couldn't see the whole deer. But he was obviously locked down on this one doe, and she was moving so slow. It was going to get dark before she got to us. And so, Jessie, she sees him, and he comes up on the opposite side of her. So we're in a 2-man ladder stand. I just kind of hunched over and let her lay the rifle on the top of my back. And we're still in a very awkward situation. But so I'm trying to tell her where the deer is. She finds him, but she likes to zoom it up where she can see. Well, we would find him, and she would zoom the scope up, and then he'd move, and she'd lose him, and we'd have to zoom the scope back down and try to find him again. And it probably took 10 minutes, but it seemed like it was taking forever. But we could never see the whole deer. And so if you can, it's important that I tell that part of it. There was a lot of zooming in and zooming out. And finally, this deer, there's maybe 30 seconds of shooting light left, and this deer kind of comes out into a little bit of an opening. And she's shooting across me. I'm bent over, the rifle's laying on my back, and I'm trying not to breathe. All this is going on. And when she squeezes the trigger, immediately she said, Dad. And I look up, and there's blood all over her face. Her whole face is just blood red. That scope has bitten her in the eye. And so I saw the deer jump. I know she's hit the deer. And I look at her, and I'm telling you, there's so much blood, and it's just pumping. And the cut it's so that I can see how deep it is. And I grab a little stocking cap out of my bag and start pressing it against her forehead, and I'm thinking, we got 30 minutes to walk out of here. My wife is going to kill me.
Yeah.
And that she's going to have a lifelong scar on the top of her eyes. I mean, all this is going through. So we can't stop the bleeding. It's just bad. So we climbed down, and I said, okay, we got 2 choices. Let's get you out of here and go to the ER, and we got to get you seen about, or we can go try to find your deer real quick. She said we're gonna go find that damn deer. so and everything is covered in blood by this point. So we get down, and we go over to where the deer was last standing, and her blood is contaminating the blood scene that what we're trying to. But we ended up finding the deer. And it was a great deer. It was one of the biggest. I've never killed a deer here in Mississippi that size. It was a great deer. We find him, locate him, and then we got that 30-minute walk out. And I'm trying to talk to my wife. She's got a friend that's going to become a dermatologist, and they're FaceTiming, and her friend is telling her, you need to get to the ER as quick as you can. It's a pretty good guy. Well, we get up to the ER, and they think she's been shot when we walk in. But they end up just taping it up, and she has a scar. It kind of looks like Harry Potter, how Harry Potter had a scar, but it's about gone now. But I've heard her say many times that she wishes it was like a badge of honor. That
Her going back to New York, and telling all her New York City friends what happened is another good thing to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened to you? Well, I was in Mississippi.
Shooting at a deer.
I was
Deer
shooting
hunting
a
with my
gun,
dad.
number one.
But so, it wasn't like it was a great
Triggering a
big
bunch of
caliber,
city
25-06, but in the process of zooming that back and forth, she got the butt of the rifle off her shoulder, and it just pounded her. So anyway,
it can happen to anybody. I did it sighting in my muzzleloader last year. Never happened to me before. Not nearly as bad, but it hurt.
Yeah. Well, it does hurt. Mac, have you ever been bit by a scope?
I have.
It does hurt. So, well, look, Mac, do you have a story?
I'm good. I've got some turkey hunting stories, but nothing crazy in the deer woods.
Dudley, why don't you do some rapid fires? The rapid fires brought to you by Springfield Armory. Dudley, you've got one of the pistols now. Have you had a chance to shoot it?
I'm gonna try it this holiday. We're gonna take it to the range and get some 45s at Gary's and
fantastic pistol. So why don't you ask Jess your rapid fire questions, and we'll just call it a day after that.
All right, Jess.
Jess, don't think, just answer.
Gotcha.
Are you ready?
I like this music.
IHOP or Waffle House?
Waffle House.
Ice chest or cooler?
Not even a question. Ice chest.
Of course.
All the
it's
way,
an
all
ice
the time.
Chest, yes.
The cooler is something you walk into.
Wrong.
An ice chest is a box.
A cooler you plug up into the wall.
Yeah, it's like at a restaurant.
Yeah. Coffee.
I could argue about that all day long.
You like your coffee black or dressed?
Black.
Bottomland or Greenleaf?
Oh, that one's tough.
You can say both.
I'll go with both.
Catfishing or brim fishing?
Catfish.
Flatheads or blue cats?
Flatheads.
Early AM or up all night?
Both.
You are a both. You're a rare both. Captain D's or Red Lobster?
That's a good one.
Jess grew up, he's a 4th generation shrimper, so he only eats Gulf shrimp.
No.
So that's always a joke.
Neither is.
Flip-flops or Crocs?
Man, that's a tough one. Crocs in the winter, flip-flops in the summer.
There you go.
Those new Crocs I
got
saw.
Crocs on now. The Luke Combs Crocs are
those
Crocs
coasting
are coming
questions
out.
here. All right, Thanksgiving turkey, regular or spatchcocked?
Fried.
Fried. You're the man. All right. Lastly, Luke Bryan or Luke Combs?
Luke Combs all day.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah,
ding,
yeah,
ding,
yeah,
ding,
yeah.
ding, ding.
I gave Dudley so many good ones
You
to,
did.
to ask you. And
Can we debate about the ice chest cooler for a
hang
while?
Hang on. Dudley didn't ask half of the questions that I gave.
Well, what were they? Say one.
I said Bozos or Lighthouse.
Oh, I can't
So
answer
that's
that.
a
One's
tough
good for
one.
Alabama, one's good for Mississippi.
That's tough.
That's tough. It's not apples to apples.
And I said shrimp or scallops.
Well, I changed that to Captain
Easy.
D's or Red Lobster.
That's
All right,
a good one. That's a better one.
If anybody wants to debate ice chest versus cooler, I'm here all day.
The cooler literally keeps everything cooler than
It's
the
an
outside.
ice chest.
It's an ice chest.
This has been fun. I love listening to these deer stories. We all love deer so much, and it's deer season. This is something you can listen to while you're in the deer stand
or on the way to
On
the
the
deer
way there.
camp.
Yeah. So Richie, have you got anything? Yeah. That's Richie. So look, Dudley, I'm looking at you. You look like you enjoyed yourself.
I had a great time.
Please, nobody get between Vandy and the door when this thing is over with. It's lunchtime and you could get hurt. So,
Yep.
all right. Mac, you're waving at me.
I mean, we're almost in December, so best holiday there is, Christmas, is coming up. So check out MossyOakStore.com.
Yes.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up.
And go sign up for the Uncle Ray's boatload of chips giveaway.
Well, there's two things. We had a commercial plan for this one that we somehow missed, and thank you, Mac, for bringing that up. And also, there was one other thing. It's cold weather now.
Stormy Cromer.
Yeah, they fit your head so good and keep your head warm, guys.
It's the best fitting hat that I've put on in a long time.
They're awesome. You need to check them out. There's a GameKeeper edition at StormyCromer.com.
My head's so big, I had to get one custom ordered, and then my dog chewed it up, so I guess I need another one.
You and your dog. Is that the three-legged dog?
The three-legged dog, yeah.
All right. Well, anything else? Let's get on out of here. Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Mac.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine. And don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.